Hello and welcome back to my small little library. Today we're going to talk about all of my favorite books from this year. I have pretty much two top fives because I thought it would be more sensible to actually split them up because I didn't have all that many wonderful reads this year, I'm gonna have to be honest, and roughly half of them were rereads. So I decided to make two top fives. One top five with my favorite rereads of the year, and one top five with my favorite new reads of the year. Because I think that just kind of gives you an insight, like more of an insight in what I read, instead of like just focusing on the new ones. I feel like it's good to highlight books that I go back to again and again because, I'm an avid rereader. I enjoy the comfort a reread of a favorite book gives me, and so I want to share that with everyone. So I've decided we're gonna start with the rereads, my favorites, and then we're gonna go with the new favorites of the year. The first one is a horror reread, which was Into the Drowning Deep by Myra Grant, my absolute favorite book by her. This is a mermaid horror. In this book, our main character, she lost her sister at sea. She's a biologist, a marine biologist, and so she decides to hire onto a ship of the same company her sister hired onto. Her sister was a journalist, and they are supposed to do experiments at high sea to see if mermaids really exist and to kind of see what happened to the ship her sister was on. And then there are the mermaids who are not amused about the people getting into their territory. Wonderful horror, really brutal horror. It doesn't sugarcoat anything. Pretty deadly horror, I would say. So there aren't a lot of survivors in the end. Yeah, this is just a joy to read. It has so much that I love in a good horror book. Like there's so much suspension if you like, even if you read it again and again. And just, the science coupled with the horror and the mythical, all connected, works out really well. The characters work well. We have assholes, we have good characters, we have weird characters. You have it all in there. And so yeah, one of my absolute favorite horror books that I do enjoy rereading again and again. Like it isn't the first time I've reread it. Then for a fantasy reread, I did do a reread of The Final Empire, which is Mistborn Book 1 by Brandon Sanderson, my absolute favorite book that he has written. But it is kind of even with The Sunlit Man, but I've read this one far more often than The Sunlit Man. So yeah, I absolutely love this. It is a massive book, but Vin will forever be one of my favorite characters. I think she's a brilliant, brilliant character, and the story is just great, and it being this like buy-in into this massive, massive world because it is the first book of Brandon Sanderson I've ever read, and so for me it is like the entry into the kingdom. Next up, we have another favorite fantasy book, and that is The Hobbit. I love Tolkien. Like, if I had to choose like one fantasy author over all of the other ones, I do think I would go with Tolkien. Ever since, I love the movies. I did actually watch the movies before I ever read the books. And then when I was a teenager, I read The Hobbit, and ever since then, this is like my ultimate go-to fantasy. So yeah, I did a reread of The Hobbit. Just a wonderful, wonderful fantasy book that has great characters. I love the elves. I love the ending. Coming back after a big adventure and getting back in, like, home and kind of settling back in. Yeah, that is just also one of my favorite fantasies. I do love a lot of good fantasy. Then we have kind of like a standout-ish favorite of the rereads, and that is A Marvelous Light by Freya Marski. I don't know how it's pronounced. This is actually a fantasy romance, I would say, with a little bit of like mystery and historical, which are a lot of things I normally don't tend to go for. But yeah, this is queer romance. We have our two main characters, who are these two guys. One is from the magical world, one is from the normal world, and he gets thrown into the magical world, and the other guy is kind of his liaison with the magical world. And yeah, throughout the story, they go on adventures, they have to solve a mystery, and they fall in love throughout that. And yeah, I think this is one of the few romances that I really, really enjoyed. I think our characters like really fit well together, and they had really different characters, but they helped each other in such nice and cute ways that yeah, this one really, really got me. I still haven't continued with the series, which is, well, no, I do think I've read the second one now, but I didn't like it as much as the first one. I think sometimes it's hard to keep it straight. But yeah, if you want to read a historical fantasy romance, I would say go with this one, because this just is really cute, and I really enjoyed it. And so yeah, I did actually do a reread as well, but like it's even rarer than just reading a romance for me already is. And then the last one of my top 5 is Children of Ruin, which is the second book, but it's kind of standing for the whole trilogy, but I only did reread this one. And yeah, this is by Adrian Tchaikovsky, and it is a sci-fi book where like there are a lot of animals in there. The Children of Time is with spiders, and then in the second one we have octopi. Yeah, I think that is the right plural. And scientists who are kind of like, you know, making planets habitable for humans, and all of the dangers and problems and struggles that come with all of that. And I just love this series. It's a brilliant, brilliant series. And I had the opportunity to listen to the audiobook of this one, which I also really enjoyed. And that is the reason why I only reread the second one, because at my library, the audiobooks for them are pretty hard to get. They're pretty much always booked out. So, you know, when I can get one, I just go into the middle of the series. I don't mind it with rereads. You know, obviously I have read all of the books, so going into the middle of a series, I can do that. I don't have a problem with that. Yeah, so those were the top 5 favorite books that I reread this year, which, you know, a lot of them are like repeat rereads, which I'm pretty happy with, that I have like my roster of books that I can go to if I need a comfort book, and I have them, and I know that I will love them, you know. And yeah, after that, let's talk about my top 5 new favorite books. And the first one is also a sci-fi, which is The Mercy of Gods by James S.A. Corey, who are the authors of The Expanse. I think it's an author duo. And this is a really interesting sci-fi. It's pretty much, we have humanity. They are living on, not on Earth anymore, and they have really only like scarce connections to humanity originally. And their planet gets kind of conquered by aliens, and they take a lot of like the top scientists and put them to work on their own planets. And that is like, I think that's a really, really fascinating start to a series. This is going to be a series. I think there might also, part 2 might also be out already. And yeah, I thought it was a really interesting take on humanity finding aliens, them just being conquered right out. And yeah, they're kind of, you know, working against the aliens from there and trying to sabotage from within. And yeah, that was really, really interesting. I really like this. I would actually really recommend going with that series, though The Expanse is also a brilliant series. So, you know, you could go with either one, but yeah, I think James S.A. Corey are great at writing sci-fi. Then we have a prequel that I read that came, I think it also came out in this year, and that is Absolution by Jeff Vandermeer, which is a Southern Reach novel. So this is the prequel to Annihilation, and I am a really, really big fan of the Area X trilogy, which starts with Annihilation. I do get why people don't like it. I am a really big fan. Like, that is one of my favorite like weird books, and this one is like really, really heavy into that. Like, it's really, really near part 1 of the Area X trilogy, so Annihilation. It does drift off a little bit in like part 2 and part 3, but this one really reminded me of part 1. And yeah, I love this book. It was weird, it was crazy. You didn't know what was happening half of the time. We did learn a lot about why things happened in the Area X trilogy. So that, you know, we learned new things, we had new questions at the end of the day, and at the end of the book, I wasn't nearer understanding the series, but I loved every little bit of it. So yeah, I would, yeah, if you liked Annihilation, like, go out and read this, even if you haven't continued with the rest of the series. I think you still can go and read this one. I wouldn't recommend it to be read before you read Annihilation, because I feel like it's a little bit of a spoilery thing if you do that. But yeah, I would really recommend. It plays out a lot in like a small village. And we pretty much have, like, I think from like 50 years before Area X starts to like directly to the start. I think that is kind of the timeline we have in that book, which I thought was a really interesting choice. But yeah, I did love that so much. That was a fantastic read. Then we have one that I only listened to as an audiobook, which I don't have here as a physical copy, and that is The Har by David Zodegren. That is a horror book. It plays in a Scottish village where a American guy comes and wants to raise the whole village, burn it all down, make it all go away, so he can put a golf course there. And yeah, our main character is an older woman, and you know, she doesn't really think it's fair, which is not, and she tries and stop it. And it is such a brilliant horror book. The main horror is the har, which is a type of fog that is coming from the sea, as far as I understand it. And so the har brings with it a little bit of horror, and yeah, things go from there. Our main character, you know, she's like, I lived here all my life, I want to die here. You know, it's sad that a lot of the young people go away, move away, all of that, and she's kind of sad about that, but she does understand why that is. But she's not at the point in her life where she's like, okay, I'm gonna move away just so you can build your golf course. And so she and the har, they are teaming up, and they are, you know, it's really creepy. It's like really creepy, the book. There's a lot of like imitation, a lot of death. It's a pretty brutal horror book, I would say. And the audiobook was narrated with a Scottish accent, which, let me tell you, I'm a lover of like Irish and Scottish accents. They are my favorite. I'm so sad that I don't speak, like, that I have like a boring German accent when I speak English, but like Irish and Scottish accents are my favorite. And yes, the narrator has a wonderful accent, and the book, like the audiobook, sounded so great. So yeah, I would actually recommend to listen to this book instead of reading it physically, though I will like keep an eye out for a physical copy, because I did really like the book as well. But yeah, the audiobook was just brilliant, and I don't think I was ever as happy about listening to an audiobook as I was with the har. And then we have two more books, one fantasy, one horror. The fantasy that was a new 5-star is by David and Lee Eddings, which is Polgara the Sorceress, which is a companion novel to the Belgariad series. And this is pretty much the whole story told by Polgara herself, which is, she's like she lives really long, like centuries long, and she's a sorceress, and well, as the title says, and she is like a big part of this story of prophecies and making them go the way they are supposed to go. And so yeah, we have most of the story in the Belgariad and the Malorian, which were the two series, and then this book kind of fills you in with what happens when she isn't in the chapters that are in the both of these series, and it tells kind of her story, what she has gotten up to in the time, fitting a little bit of like the things we didn't know, and giving us a little bit more perspective on why some things happen as they happen in the series. And I really loved this. I felt like this was the best perspective of the series, and so I give this 5 stars, obviously. Like, all of these books are 5 stars. And then we are coming to the most surprising book that is also a horror book, and that is Bed Eater by Kylie Lee Baker. And this was in a horror Illumicrate so I didn't know that I would be getting it, you know. And this one really, really surprised me. It is a horror book about the beginning of Corona, and our main character is Chinese American, and she lives in America at the beginning of the pandemic, where people are turning against Asian looking people, not even only Chinese people, because there are a lot of people out there who think all people from Asian countries look the same, which is like kind of crazy. But yeah, so her sister gets pushed in front of a train and dies, and with that comes a lot of depression, and she has OCD, which makes life harder. And so she goes she has to find a job because she needs to live somehow through the pandemic, and so she becomes a crime scene cleaner for like this little family business. And from there on, she realizes that there is a lot of crime against Chinese women or Asian women. I think most of them were Chinese, but I'm not totally sure anymore, because it's quite a while since I read it. And yeah, so she and her two co-workers try to find out what's happening, and it goes from there. And this is like a depiction of the horror, for example, because she does get haunted by something, and it is really creepy. I love the depiction of like how everything went down, because obviously there's part of like what happened in reality in there, and that part is like a really, really sad part. There's a lot of corruption in here, also with like police and stuff. And then you have like the mythological aspect with Chinese mythology, and you know, how they handle death and spirits and stuff like that, which was super interesting. I haven't read a lot of like Chinese mythology in books, so that was super duper interesting. And then you have the horror aspect, which was really, really cool. It's not one of those like, you don't have like jump scares in here. It's more like a horror atmosphere throughout, but it's not like, oh, it's so scary. You know what I mean? Like it's I think this book, like the atmosphere is what stands out the most when it comes to the horror aspect of the book. But yeah, I really, really love this. I think it's a brilliant book, and I think I was really glad that it was in the book box, because I don't know if I would have seen it on my own, because I'm not somebody who looks up like recent releases. So for me, that was brilliant, you know. So yeah, those were the top five of the books that I read for the first time in 2025. So those 10 books were my favorite of the year. Yeah, if you've read any of these, leave your opinion down below. I would recommend them all, but maybe you're not. But yeah, just leave your opinion of them down below. If you want to share your favorite books that you've read in this year, please do that as well. I think we all could do with a lot more like great reads, and yeah, just share some positivity in the comments, you know. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video, and hopefully I will see you in the next one. Bye bye!